So a lot of you guys might be wondering what weapon you should use. So in this video, we're going to be breaking down every single weapon to give you a better idea as to what each one has to offer. This is not going to be a super long detailed guide video. This is more of a basic condensed entry-level explanation of each weapon. Shout outs to the content creators that are involved in this. I know the information is good because I've reached out to some very well-respected, skilled, experienced New World main content creators that are going to be breaking down their respective weapons for you guys. So big shout outs to them. Check them out. All of their links can be found in the description below. Real quick, if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to the channel. I'm getting super close to my goal of 200,000 subs, and I would really appreciate that. Also follow me on Twitch. That's my main platform. I'm streaming almost every single day.
The Rapier is one of the most versatile weapons in New World, and is easy to play, but hard to master. It boasts impressive movement options and outplay potential, flexing some of, if not the most skill expression of any weapon in New World. It is also the king of DPS in all PvE content. Additionally, the Rapier excels as a utility offhand due to its movement and counter options. With some practice, it's an effective close-range combat option, and is a great choice for players who enjoy a flashier kiting playstyle with a high skill ceiling, with an option for massive burst damage as well. The Rapier's two skill trees, Blood and Grace, define its playstyle. The Blood tree can dish out devastating burst damage with the Bloody End capstone, but because it can be easily countered in PvP, it is mainly used in PvE. The Grace tree focuses on movement options and outplay potential, offering a counter with Riposte, damage through movement with Flesh, and Evade, which doubles as both a movement option as well as an auto-attack reset that rewards an aggressive playstyle. Light armor is a great choice for players looking to lean fully into extra mobility and damage, while medium armor is also a strong choice for players looking to prioritize tankiness with minimal damage falloff. The Rapier primarily scales with dexterity, with a minor intelligence scaling. Heavy dex investment boosts damage, but past 350 you'll get diminishing returns, so if you're chasing higher damage numbers, investing points into intelligence after hitting 350 dex is the optimal route. The Rapier is very flexible and to some extent can be a useful pairing with almost every weapon in the game, but generally, you'll want to pair it with another dex scaling weapon for best results. The Musket, which also scales with dex and intelligence, is a great option for players looking to maximize their attribute investment, dealing massive damage at range and up close when necessary. The Bow is another great ranged pairing, offering a more mid-range, dual-focused playstyle, as mentioned earlier. The Spear is also a solid pairing for a double melee build and covers many of the weaknesses Rapier has, providing heavy CC as well as very strong tracking. One pro tip for new Rapier players is to fully utilize the Evade ability. It can be used for extra damage, but it can also instantly cancel the animation of any Rapier ability, opening up new doors for mix-ups, movement options, and outplay potential.
The Sword and Shield is one of, if not the most used weapon in the entire game due to its diversity in roles that can accomplish in terms of both PvE and PvP. This weapon has strength, dexterity, scaling, is usually paired with the shield because it gives access to more utility in terms of having more shield perks that will allow you to live a little bit longer, and typically will take 3 out of 10 slots in an endgame raid, and in terms of PvP takes up to upwards of 10 to 20 war slots. It is a very used, if not the most used weapon combo in terms of both PvE and PvP. From a PvE standpoint, there's the perk 1 with the shield, which while you have a round shield will extend the duration of all debuffs on the target. If you have 2 of these users, you're able to extend debuffs into infinity, which is why that combo is so heavily used in terms of PvE. And in terms of PvP, there are a variety of different combos that you can go for. The light spectrum, you have Sword and Shield Hatchet, which is one of the best assassin-oriented builds in the entire game, especially in terms of open world. You also have access to SNS Great Axe, which is a fantastic chase-oriented weapon combo, which has access to some of the best gap closers in the entire game. You have Sword and Shield Spear, which is a very common disruptor-oriented build that looks to CC targets until they're not able to do whatever they're trying to do, and your allies can kind of finish them up for you. Lastly, you have access to Pure Tanks, which look to take advantage of the ultimate perk Defensive Formation that will reduce the damage of allies around the shield. If you see someone that has an aura around them and they're just holding block, this is probably what they're using, and you probably won't do a lot of damage to them or their allies, and I'd recommend moving on to a different target, as you will very likely not be able to kill the person that is using this. One tip for this weapon is if you go for a heavy attack before using an ability, you can increase the distance in which you could hit targets. So for example, I could hit shield rush from this distance, but if I want to hit someone from a little bit further away, you can do a heavy attack into an ability, and then it will kind of reach out a little bit further, because your heavy attack provides a little bit of lunge, and then it will kick you back at the end. But if you cancel out before it kicks you back, you can get a little bit more distance out of it, and you can hit targets much further away.
Hatchet's a very universal weapon that allows so many different playstyles, such as using it as an offhand to life staff, to great axe, to sword, to spear, literally almost anything you want. It gives you haste, it gives you death defy, it gives you fortify, it gives you disease, it gives you rend, it gives you exhaust. There's so many different avenues you could take Hatchet down and it'd be really, really good and really thrive as an offhand. Now if you wanted to use it as a main hand, you would play it more with sword and shield, and you would play super aggressive with berserk for all the empower and haste that it provides. It allows you to play at a very fast pace, almost faster than any other weapon in the game. And this is why Hatchet is so widely used throughout the entire game. But you'll see it in OPR, you'll see it in 3v3s, you'll see it in open world, you'll see it even in PvE. Now, it may not be the best PvE weapon, but it does thrive in some Anger Earth content with the right setup. Hatchet is a very, very, very strong and high DPS weapon with a lot of survivability, and it's a very good choice for anybody wanting to learn a melee weapon.
The Flail is a one-handed melee weapon that is primarily used with the shield. This weapon has access to strength-focused scaling. If you use it with a shield, you'll have access to more utility, and if you use it without a shield, you'll have access to more healing. So depending on if you're trying to build it for more utility or healing, you may or may not want to use it with a shield. This weapon typically takes 1 to 2 slots in a 50-man war army in endgame PvP. In terms of endgame PvE, typically takes 1 slot in a raid. The key ability that makes it essential for both is called Leader of the Pack. Leader of the Pack will boost the empower of nearby allies, thereby increasing their damage. The other thing that makes it extremely strong in terms of PvP is Arcane Vortex. Arcane Vortex has access to Flailing Stability, which is a unique skill trait that will provide a CC immunity to nearby allies. This is key in terms of being able to quote-unquote play the game and not being CC chained over and over. This ability will allow people to escape certain situations that otherwise would lead to their death, and just overall is very good at saving lives. This weapon combo for this build is mostly oriented towards support-oriented roles, so Flail IG is a really common one that will just help people live a little bit better. There's also Flail VG, which has access to large amounts of buffs from the Flail and large amounts of debuffs from the Void Gauntlet. That is a really fun combo, but I wouldn't say as the most popular in terms of PvP endgames. There's also Flail Warhammer, which I've seen play from time to time as a kind of assassin-oriented build that looks to take advantage of Arcane Eruption and the unique Flail Odo, which will allow you to do more damage to people that are stunned and or tripped. And with that, you can essentially combo people until they just completely die, which is one of the only one-shot combos left in the game, albeit is not as strong as it used to be. In terms of PvE, Flail Warhammer is also used as a Renbot-oriented role, or you can see the Flail paired as an offhand with either the Life Staff or with a tank with Sword and Shield to just provide good utility without having to sacrifice that much in terms of your main hand's weapon combos. This weapon has access to 50% weaken, which is the highest of any single weapon in the game as well, so that makes it essentially mandatory for PvE, and in terms of PvP is mostly just used for its very good buffs and for Arcane Smite, which will extend the duration of non-active abilities.
The spear is a melee weapon that shines in close to mid-range combat. It's ideal for players who enjoy a tactical, control-heavy playstyle with a mix of CC, burst damage, and bleeds. It is also a must-have in PvE due to its superior debuffing ability, as well as its heavy CC options. Its basic attacks include light, heavy, and a charged heavy. Light attacks are quick and great for weaving between abilities, while heavy attacks offer increased damage and a significantly longer reach. The spear's 2 skill trees, Zoner and Impaler, define its playstyle. The Zoner tree focuses on controlling the battlefield with knockdowns and spacing tools, while the Impaler tree leans into sustained damage and bleeds coupled with debilitating debuffs. Opt for light armor if you prefer the extra mobility and damage, and medium armor if you prefer a more tanky, brawler type build. The spear primarily scales with dexterity, with a minor strength scaling. Heavy dex investment boosts damage, but past 350 you'll get diminishing returns, so if you're chasing higher damage numbers, investing points into strength after hitting 350 dex is the optimal route. Pair the spear with another dex scaling weapon for best results. The bow gives you strong ranged pressure, letting you poke before switching to the spear for lockdown. The Rapier offers high mobility and is great for dual-focused players. The Hatchet is very beginner-friendly, offering impressive burst damage, utility, and survivability, especially with its Defy Death passive. A top tip for spear users is to chain your CC abilities for maximum lockdown. A simple combo like Vault Kick into Sweep into a heavy attack can stun, knock down, and punish your target with a true combo or guaranteed damage. Practice weaving light and heavy attacks with your abilities for smooth, high-impact combos.
Greatsword is the definition of flexibility. It can play both offense and defense with a single stance swap. Every move has weight, and mastering it means mastering tempo. The weapon scales equally with strength and dexterity, which lets it fit into bruiser or dex hybrid builds depending on your setup. In PvE, Greatsword shines because of its consistent DPS. The Onslaught stance boosts your damage output, while Defiance gives you mitigation and sustain. When played right, you can maintain uptime on bosses without needing constant healing. It also has access to Rend with Skyward Slash and Weaken with Roaring Rapture. In terms of weapon pairings, Hatchet is great for aggressive melee builds that want the safety net of Defy Death and CC immunity of Berserk. Spear or Sword and Shield also work well if you prefer control or more balanced defense. Rapier is good if you are looking for an offense that is gonna give you kiting potential. The Greatsword is all about flow, knowing when to commit and when to defend. It feels heavy and powerful, but it is surprisingly skill-based.
Great Axe. Great Axe is a very, very strong weapon in this game. It scales 100% off of strength, and you could pair it with multiple different weapons, the three best in my opinion being Flail, Warhammer, and Sword and Shield. Sword and Shield Great Axe allows a lot of chase potential and a lot of survivability, depending on how you use your abilities. And then if you run it with Warhammer, it's more of a brawling build, the kind of bruiser playstyle. You play with the Zerg, you secure kills with your team, and you look to play with other blues. Now, Great Axe Flail, on the other hand, provides more CC, while also being like a more of a chasey kind of build, with more survivability than the other one, but less damage. So you just gotta find your balance on what you want to play. And remember, all the attributes for these weapons are different. So Great Axe scales with 100% strength, while the other ones may scale with something else, so you must figure out a good stat split.
Warhammer is a definition of raw impact, a weapon built for control and crowd destruction. Every swing is deliberate, and when it lands, it changes the fight. It scales purely with strength, and it's a core pick for frontline bruisers and tanks alike. In PvE, Warhammer dominates packs of enemies thanks to its massive AoE CC. Abilities like Shockwave helps stunning multiple people at a time, while Armor Breaker applies a huge rend, lowering the target's armor. It's a must-have for organized groups in dungeons and expeditions, where managing aggro and staggering enemies is key. For weapon pairings, Great Axe is the classic bruiser combo. You pull enemies in with Gravity Well and hit them with your Detonate, Heartrun and Maelstrom combo. Sword and Shield works great for tanks who want maximum control with defensive flexibility. The Warhammer's strength lies in controlling the tempo of a fight. One well-timed shockwave can swing an entire encounter. It's simple in concept, but incredibly high impact in execution.
The bow is a ranged projectile-based weapon that excels at close to mid-range combat, and is a great choice for players who enjoy a kiting playstyle, with options for dealing AoE dot damage as well as devastating single-target damage. The bow has three basic attacks: hipfire, light attack, and heavy attack. Hipfiring should be completely avoided, as shots fired from the hip do reduce damage. Light attacks can be useful for quick chip damage, but heavy attacks are king, and should be prioritized due to their increased projectile speed and damage. The bow's two skill trees, Skirmisher and Hunter, define its playstyle. The Skirmisher tree focuses on maintaining distance while applying AoE dot damage, whereas the Hunter tree leans heavily into up-close and personal encounters with an emphasis on single-target burst damage. Additionally, a light armor build is generally recommended as the bow greatly benefits from the increased dodge distance as well as the passive damage increase. The bow is a single attribute weapon, scaling solely off dexterity. The more points you pour into your dex attribute, the higher your bow's base damage will be, with diminishing returns past 350 dexterity. Slotting points past 350 dex isn't the worst thing you can do, however, prioritizing certain passives found in the strength, intelligence, and focus attribute nodes often prove to be more useful depending on your build. To maximize your attribute stat investment, it is best to pair the bow with an offhand that also scales with dexterity. The Hatchet is a solid option for newer players as it provides strong utility and disengage options, including its capstone Defy Death, which prevents the player from dying when taking lethal damage. The Spear is a simple and effective high damage offhand, catering more towards players who are looking for a combination of dots and debuffs, burst damage, and heavy CC options for when enemies attempt to close the gap. The Rapier is a great pairing for players looking for more of a duelist playstyle who prefer to prioritize movement options and outplay potential. This weapon has a higher skill ceiling than most, but can be devastating in capable hands. One pro tip for new bow players is to perform light or heavy attacks into your abilities whenever possible. This is a form of basic animation cancelling that most weapons have access to, and this will help to maximize your burst damage potential.
The Blunderbuss, an absolute nightmare for any melee player. Skilling off strength and intelligence, this weapon brings raw power and chaos to any fight. It's a close to mid-range menace that strives when you get up close and personal, turning tiny mistakes from your enemies into straight-up nuke clips. Blunderbuss has a unique basic attack, 2 shots before you have to reload. Reloading can leave you vulnerable and make your movements clunky, but fear not, this weapon reloads even in your offhand. Learn when to swap off it and for how long is a total game changer for keeping that mobility and pressure going. And thanks to its insane damage and added range compared to most melee options, the kiting potential on this weapon is second to none. With tools like Netshot combined with that perfect close to mid-range sweet spot, you do not want to be the melee player tasked with running it down. Now let's talk artifacts. Tempest Fury gives you unmatched movement and sustained damage when you're deep in the mix, perfect for players who love staying aggressive and smothering their targets. Life Taker takes the same aggression and cranks it even higher, letting you chain kills and cooldowns like a psycho once you start rolling. Finisher is for the more patient players, waiting for that perfect window, then punishing any slip-ups with clean and calculated burst. And if you really want to tilt your enemies, Sin is the go-to. It keeps your targets constantly debuffed while giving you that extra layer of safety that a Hatchet provides. And of course, if you've got to talk perks, Exhaustive Netshot is arguably the most broken perk in the game right now, completely crippling your target's stamina regen and slowing them so hard that every follow-up hit just lands cleanly. Pair this with Plague Nades and you're starting through heals and stamina bars like they don't even exist. Regardless of your build, it's all about keeping that constant pressure, knowing exactly when to dive in, when to pull back, and when to unleash everything in one explosive burst. And once it clicks, you stop playing cautious and start feeling unstoppable.
Musket. Now Musket is a very solid choice if you want to play far away while still doing a lot of damage. Most of your damage is going to be burst damage on Musket, that being because you could play low con to maximize your DPS. You could pair it with Rapier artifact Finisher, the Void Gauntlet artifact Life Taker, or the Ice Gauntlet artifact Deep Freeze. Now Musket does primarily scale off Dex, but it also scales off Int, so all three are solid options. Rapier is a safer secondary weapon, helps you stay alive and kite better than the others, while Void Gauntlet is a higher DPS, more glass cannon spec with not as much kiting potential, but very, very good burst. Deep Freeze is a good third option that allows for team play while also dealing high DPS, so it's a little bit in the middle. Musket's also one of those weapons that you could take your PvP build and hop straight into PvE and also perform really well with a lot of damage, as long as your secondary is Rapier and PvE. With the correct spec, you'll be up there in like some of the best PvEers. You'll do a lot of damage.
Alright, time to get into the most historically hated weapon in all of New World, the Fire Staff. Known for its flashy gameplay and insane kill potential, this in-scaling monster has been melting people since the dawn of Aeturnum. The Fire Staff is classified as a ranged magical weapon, but don't let that description fool you. When played right, this thing can dominate at any range, long, mid, and even close. When it comes to PvP, this weapon has two very polarizing playstyles. You can choose to play it safe and sit in your backline, raining down ungodly amounts of damage with Meteor Shower, or you can play it like you got a Death Wish, diving in headfirst with Burnout, turning risky plays into highlight reels. Just be warned, juggling mana for your spells, perfecting cancels, and saving stamina for the clutch dodge is an art. One misinput and you go from Pyromancer God to please don't hit me real quick. When it comes to artifacts, the Fire Staff doesn't have a ton of standout options on its own, which is why it's often paired with the Ice Gauntlet artifact, Deep Freeze. It's a great insurance policy to fall back on, gives you a safer and more controlled playstyle. But if you're not the type to play it safe, Life Taker is more your speed. It gives you the bursty, aggressive playstyle that lets you nuke targets before they even realize what's hitting them. And for the absolute mad lads out there, Abyss. This one lets you get up close and personal, rewards precise timing and perfect positioning. It's not for the faint of heart, but if you like brawling in the middle of the chaos while your team watches in disbelief, this might be the artifact for you. Regardless of what artifact you choose, the core Fire Staff gameplay always remains the same. It's all about auto-weaving into your abilities, allowing you to keep that constant pressure while using heavy attacks to manage your cooldowns. It's a rhythm, a flow of casting, cancelling, and moving in sync perfectly. So whether you're raining down meteors from the backline or diving straight into the chaos with Burnout, remember, the Fire Staff rewards confidence, precision, and control. One of the flashiest weapons in the game, and when you master it, you're not just playing your world, you're putting on a show.
The Life Staff is the only dedicated healing weapon currently in New World Aeturnum. Every ability, and even its light attacks, can heal allies, and as a result, it's one of the most powerful weapons in the game. Whether you're interested in PvP or PvE, if you're playing in a group, you'll definitely want to make sure you have a player rocking the Life Staff. Attribute-wise, the Life Staff currently only scales off of Focus, and Focus is the only attribute that increases outgoing healing of any weapon that can heal others. As a result, you'll want to make sure you assign plenty of stat points to Focus in order to have your Life Staff provide effective healing. It's also worth mentioning that Life Staff builds, especially in PvE, are almost always played in a light equip load, as it gives you a huge 30% bonus to outgoing healing. Common weapon pairings for the Life Staff would include Flail or Void Gauntlet in PvE, as they also both scale off of Focus and can provide additional support to your team in the form of weakening the enemy, fortifying you and your teammates, empowering you and your teammates, and just generally providing a bit more damage that you can dip into whilst your Life Staff abilities are on cooldown. For PvP, Life Staff is often paired with Rapier or Hatchet. Unlike in PvE, your secondary weapon with the Life Staff is often selected for survivability. The reason behind this, most players will usually try to kill the healer, and you cannot taunt players, at least not in a literal sense, like you can in PvE. As a result, Life Staff players will need a secondary weapon that provides them movement and escape options, and both the Rapier and Hatchet abilities achieve this very well. Ability-wise, I would recommend always using Sacred Ground in any scenario, PvE or PvP. Placing this heal on a player first will increase the healing they receive from all other Life Staff abilities by 50%. For PvE, Orb of Protection and Beacon are usually your second and third abilities, and you fire these out onto your tank and melee players nearby whenever they're needed. If you're playing with a group that are using more ranged weapons, you may want to consider switching Orb or Beacon for Splash of Light, as it's easier to heal ranged players with this ability. In PvP, single target heals are used much more, as players tend to focus on one target at a time. Sacred Ground and Divine Embrace will almost always be used as abilities in any PvP healer build, with the third ability changing depending on your playstyle. To get started in PvP, I'd recommend trying Sacred Ground, Divine Embrace, and Splash of Light.
Next up, the Ice Gauntlet, your world's most versatile and strategic weapon. It's infamous for being able to turn fights on their head with single abilities like Ice Wall, which roots slow and rend enemies, completely controlling space and giving you the upper hand in chaotic situations. Combine that with Ice Tomb for clutch escapes, and this weapon can single-handedly turn the tide of battle. But don't let its utility fool you. The Ice Gauntlet is far from just a support weapon. When played right, it boasts some of the best bursts in the entire game. Land all 4 parts of an Ice Spike and you can instantaneously delete your enemies. Scaling purely with intelligence, the Ice Gauntlet pairs beautifully with weapons such as Fire Staff, Void Gauntlet, and Blunderbuss, maximizing your damage and scaling output. That said, thanks to its insane survivability and utility, it's somewhat viable with almost any weapon in the game. Mastering the Ice Gauntlet is all about understanding your passives, the big one being Refreshing Frost. Keep within your frosted areas and cycle through abilities fast to maintain good uptime. When it comes to weapon perks, you got a few key ones that really change how the Ice Gauntlet feels. First, Healing Tomb. This one gives you a nice little heal as you exit your Ice Tomb, but the real magic happens when you manually break your own tomb instead of letting the enemies do it. You'll get immunity frames and Fortify, letting you survive situations that should have been impossible. It's honestly crazy the amount of things you can get away with when you play it right. Then there's Unending Thaw. This keeps enemies chilled for an extra 2 seconds upon leaving any frost area. The extra time can be huge. It allows you to root enemies with the heavy root passive even when they're not standing directly in frost area. You can also use it to simply get extra uptime on your Deep Freeze, the most popular Ice Gauntlet artifact right now. So whether you're freezing enemies in place, nuking targets with perfectly timed Ice Spikes, slowing and rooting opponents with an Ice Wall, or surviving what should have been certain death with an Ice Tomb, the Ice Gauntlet rewards precision, timing, and awareness. It's flashy, it's tactful, and when you master it, you're not just in the fight, you're commanding it.
They're roaming top right, off point. Top right, 3, 2, 1. Top right now, top right now, top right, 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 top right.
Oh, that's such a good ghetto, bro. Oh my god.
The Void Gauntlet is a magic weapon with int focus scaling that provides a lot of utility in terms of debuffs. This weapon has access to one of the only buff strips in the game and is by far the most consistent and best one through its skill Nullifying Oblivion, and then also is very good in terms of locking down key solo targets through its Void Blade Scream combo, which will allow you to gap close using the Void Blade, use Scream to lock targets in place, and just finish them off over time. In terms of PvE, this typically takes 1 out of 10 slots in an endgame raid, with some access to some good utility through Void Blade, the ability to use Tether, and the ability to use Essence Rupture. Essence Rupture and Tether are some of the most unique abilities in the entire game because they can be applied while your main hand is out, and then you can switch to your offhand and still have those abilities being active. So if you are struggling in any solo PvE content, I generally recommend putting Void Gauntlet as your offhand using Tether and Essence Rupture, and through that you'll have access to some good lifesteal, a good weaken and empower, which will allow you to kind of finish harder single target bosses. So if you are struggling in like solo trials or anything like that, it's generally a good weapon to use as an offhand for newer players. In terms of PvE endgame, this is most commonly used with Life Staff with Void Gauntlet, where you'll dump your Life Staff utility and then switch to your Void Gauntlet to do more DPS, as well as offer the party access to more debuffs through things like Rens from the passive Disintegrate bonus. And then in terms of PvP, it's typically used with Void Gauntlet, Ice Gauntlet, where you have access to good staying power through the Void Gauntlet, but if you ever get into a little bit of trouble, you can switch to the IG, pop your tomb, pop your shower, create a little bit of space, and then go back to your Void Gauntlet to start doing things. This weapon has, at one point, was taking up over 10 slots in a war army. Nowadays, it's a little bit less. It's sitting at around 4 to 6, with its role being entirely different. Originally, this was primarily using Oblivion, using Scream, and using Orb of Decay to provide lots of AoE debuffs. Nowadays, people are using it more with Void Blade to try to finish single targets down. One tip versus this weapon, if you're struggling versus it, you could use Ginge plus 4 Invig, and using Jin plus 4 Invig will completely nullify the effect of Disintegrate, which will make you effectively immune to the debuffs that Void Gauntlet provides. This has taken over the meta recently and has been the primary way that people have been using to counter Void Gauntlet in terms of PvP.